الحمد لله وكفى وسلام على عباده الذين اصطفى وعلى آله الذين ارتضى ومن بهداهم اقتدى وبآثار أهل الحديث اكتفى وبعد. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Abdul came at the right time. Sahih versus Da'if. Oh, no. Just remove the curtain. They've got a class upstairs, I forgot. So they're not going to be here. So it's fine. You can relax, inshallah. Unfortunate. Okay. So Sheikh Muhammad. There's no stands or anything. Okay. So basically, on the first week, we spoke about these initial definitions. Before I forget, there was a question last time on the live. Someone asked. I asked a question on the first week, and I didn't give the answer the week after, and that was regarding why is the hadith of Masal al-Hufayn, why is it hadith mutawatir? Why is it mentioned as a point of Aqidah? So why is it? It's a good question for the Sheikh Fahim, because you did Aqidah Tahawiyah, right?
Some of it.
Yeah, but the main bits. So in Aqidah Tahawiyah, and right in the beginning, you'll do as the signs of Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah. Imam Abu Hanifa would be like, the signs of the Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah is Tawqir al-Shaykhain, the two Shaykhs, Abu Bakr and Umar, and Ta'zim al-Khatanain, to do honor the two son-in-laws, the Ahmads, Uthman and Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu. And one of the points is Masal al-Khufayn, right? And also later on in Aqidah Tahawiyah, one of the final points is Masal al-Khufayn, is wanara Masal al-Khufayn. We understand Masal al-Khufayn to be something legitimate. Why would Masal al-Khufayn, which is a masala in fiqh, why would it be mentioned in Aqidah?
Because to question the authenticity of that hadith would be questioning the authenticity of the Quran.
Why?
Because they have the same narrators.
Mutawatir. Because it's mutawatir. But the Masal al-Khufayn is not mentioned in the Quran. And Hassan Basri, because in the Quran, what is it? Yeah, but what is it in the Quran? The wazifa for washing the feet. Is washing the وَأَرْجُلَكُمْ وَأَرْجُلِكُمْ, right? وَأَرْجُلَكُمْ, basically in normal language. وَأَرْجُلَكُمْ and arjul. In the Quran it says you have to wash your feet for wudu. In the hadith it says you can wipe your feet, right? But then if the Quran is saying one thing, how can you overrule a Quranic ruling in wudu with something that's in the hadith, right? But then this particular hadith reaches the level of mutawatir, mass transmission, which we explained through like the various diagrams. I'm trying to make it full. Okay, it's full now. Can you guys see it full screen, yeah? Can you see my little pointer? Yeah. So again, the hadith is divided into two by the muhaddithin. One is mutawatir and one is ahad. Mutawatir is mass transmission. You can have two types in wording and in meaning. People said there was very less hadith that were hadith mutawatir in terms of wording, right? And it's very little because we mentioned the various reasons for it as well. Why? Why would there be? Because it's very difficult to achieve that. And the implications of that, if you object to a mutawatir hadith, then it's tantamount to kufr, being outside of the fold of Islam. That's why some scholars like Ibn Hibban said there is no mutawatir hadith in terms of wording. People like Shatibi in the I'tisam, he mentions, I've got the quote actually saved somewhere, but he said that mutawatir hadith is only hypothetical, or qalilun nadir. He says it's very rare to have an actual mutawatir hadith in terms of wording, because objecting to mutawatir hadith is objecting to something that is on the same level as the Quran in terms of transmission, right? So it's very difficult to sort of achieve that. That's what he mentioned. And then these are all the definitions. Okay, and then the different types of hadith. Hadith Qudsi, I think we touched upon last time. Can you remember the Hadith Qudsi?
You started already. You didn't.
I didn't explain it. Yeah, I thought so. I think we started it and then we didn't sort of go into the thing. It's interesting that that book that's full of mutawatir hadith by the Qattani scholar, Sheikh, what's his name, the Moroccan scholar. The Sheikh from Morocco, what's his name? You know, man. Sheikh Qattani. So the Sheikh Qattani, he was like, he included two hadith. There it is. He included two hadith in his book. What is his book? Yeah, نظم المتناثر من الحديث المتواتر. That was the whole point of mentioning those books in the beginning, right? So the نظم المتناثر في من الحديث من المتواتر. That's basically a hadith, a book of a collection of hadith where he's only collected mutawatir hadith in his opinion. But then we said that how could you have 200? Like in Al-Suyuti, when he collected, he had like 200. But how could you have 200 hadith when it's very difficult to achieve that threshold? So what we answered in the scholars' answer is that they had a lower threshold for mutawatir. Like you don't have to fulfill like every single person hears it. Then there's an exponential growth. I had a thing here. No, it's too difficult to show you. It's in one of the lectures. You know, second lecture we did takrar of. You know, the steroid hormone one, where there's like, basically in one of the lectures, the guy gave a sick diagram, and that was mutawatir. That's basically the diagram of mutawatir, in terms of like, it's here actually. A similar, yeah, here. So mutawatir chain, the green one is the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and all of these are the companions. And can you see the number just increases in every generation? That's mutawatir. It just gets so well known that it's impossible for people to unite upon a lie. And we gave the example of the existence of China, right? That's based on tawatur. So this the Sheikh in Nazm al-Mutanathir min Hadith Mutawatir, the Sheikh Qattani, he mentions actually the hadith about remember the beginning of the year when we spoke about the Karbala, remember, and then we said the whole incident. Remember, there was a hadith about when Ammar got killed. Remember Siffin and Jamal when they went back. Remember when we covered it? I did it in your house, man, right in the beginning of the year. So in there was a hadith where Ammar, the Prophet ﷺ said about Ammar, "Taqtulu Ammaran al-fi'atul baghiya." The rebellious group will kill Ammar. But who is the rebellious group? The group of Sahaba who were going, Muawiyah's group. Remember, I told you, someone said to Muawiyah that this hadith has reached us with so many chains, it's definitely authentic. So Sheikh Qattani said, this taqtulu ammaran al-fi'atul baghiya, this is from the mutawatir hadith as well. So many people heard it. So someone went to Muawiyah radiallahu ta'ala and they said that this had, basically you're the group who killed Ammar. And remember what he said? Can you remember? Can you remember? He was like,
No, you can't.
No. He did a ta'wil of it. He said the person who killed him was the person who sent him out, right? But that was obviously, that's a side discussion. But I just wanted to mention that this hadith, taqtulu ammaran al-fi'atul baghiya, this is mutawatir ma'nawi according to this Shaykh Qattani in Nazm al-Mutanathir min al-hadith al-mutawatir. And then also the hadith of man kuntu mawlahu. Who's that about?
Huh?
Who's that about? Man kuntu fa'aliyun mawlahu. Some of the accolades of Ali radiallahu ta'ala mentioned in Bukhari. Man kuntu mawlahu. Whoever is my mawla, then Ali is also their mawla. Right? It sounds like one of the Rawafid hadith, but it's actually mentioned in Bukhari. Right? And the Shaykh Qattani includes that from the mutawatir narrations that so many people heard that the Prophet ﷺ said this about Ali radiallahu ta'ala. Obviously, we're not talking about the praise of Ali radiallahu ta'ala, but it's a side thing. I think people when they hear the praise of the Ahlul Bayt and they hear the praise of Ali radiallahu ta'ala a lot, they think immediately are weak or fabricated. It's true there are a lot of fabricated hadith, but there are also a lot of authentic hadith, and even to the extent that Sheikh says this hadith is mutawatir, right? Mass transmitted to such an extent to object to it, it could be tantamount to kufr. And then there was these things about ahad, and last time we went through ahad as well, the three types of ahad, do you know them? Mashhur, Aziz, Gharib. What's mashhur?
One,
It's a subcategory of ahad.
one that was.
Yeah. This brother knows mashhur. You know mashhur, Sheikh?
I'm not sure.
Have a go. You'll get it. Look, you got the diagram to help you.
Less than 3 people narrated. No less than 3 people.
Of course, yeah. So can you see the green one here? Can you see my pointer? Green is who? Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And can you see 3 in the first generations of companions, and then after that it doesn't matter how many people there were. But this example of a mashhur chain is part of ahad. So this can be authentic. We're not talking about authenticity. We're just talking about how many people narrated it, right? Then we spoke about Aziz. Aziz, what was the definition of Aziz? قلم سوى سعر استواج. Need to speak louder.
No, there's less than 2 people.
2, yeah, in the companions' time, exactly. That's Aziz. And Shaykhna bless us with the explanation of Gharib. There's 1 in the generation of the companions, in generation of Tabi'in. Yeah, so there's 1 narrator there in this diagram. This is actually a sick diagram, like explaining, summarizing it all.
What if it was like 3 and then Tabi went to 1 and then it went to 3 and Tabi?
Okay, so this is only i'tibar of what? The first generation, right? So in the first generation, if there was 1, but in the Tabi'in, if there was many, still Gharib. But remember, Gharib.
What if it was three Sahaba,
Yeah,
but only 1 Tabi?
it doesn't matter. That's going to be mashhur, hadith mashhur.
Really?
Yeah, this is only i'tibar of this. Yeah, this is zaman of Sahaba. Look at the definitions. I went through them in depth last time. That's why it's a bit boring. I don't want to go through it again. So it's on the YouTube live, inshallah. That's why there's the point of the minute. Sorry? What? Yeah, I'm sure it has. There's examples here in this one. Here. What do you mean where there's 3 companions and then it's only 1? That would be very qalil al-wuqu'. It would be like very rare. Because if you think about it, if 3 companions heard it, but then do you know when it would happen? If those companions weren't mashhur for narrating hadith. So for example, if you rarely hear hadith from Abu Bakr radiallahu ta'ala, he's rare, but obviously he spent a lot of his time with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So he must have heard what other companions said. So this could be an example of what Sheikh Fahim said. So in the companions' time, 3 people heard it, but then Tabi'in's time, less than 3 people. Could be. But then again, we have to look at individual examples. And remember, Tirmidhi says, هذا حديث صحيح غريب. So hadith is sahih and gharib at the same time. Meaning this could be an authentic chain, but just because of the number of narrators in that chain, it's called gharib. Gharib, what does it mean? Fahim?
In the generation of Sahaba, there was only 1.
Yeah, but in the dictionary, what does it mean in Arabic? Strange. I thought you were going to say poor. Because that's what they do in it. Gharib. Gharib means poor. That's what I was saying to Abdul. In Arabic, a word might mean something in the same exact word, same spelling, everything, might be in a different language. They mean completely different things. That's why I was saying about that brother, like, he always, not to like say anything bad, but mixes up between language, mixes up definitions. You have to have your straight definition, right? And that definition of Usul al-Hadith, right? Tawatur, the Tawatur definition, right? Yeah. Tawatur meant that he said the definition of Tawatur, or it has to reach 50 companions have to narrate it. Bring me 1 hadith where the 50 companions have narrated it. The threshold for Tawatur is very high, right? So it's quite difficult to achieve that. So he said regarding the hadith of Rafa Yadain, right, that was hadith mutawatir. But then if it was hadith mutawatir, objecting to that would be what? Exactly. Don't you think the whole world would have done it? So how could it be mutawatir? And then Abdul Hayy Laknawi said it was mutawatir, right? Okay, fair enough. He's a Hanafi scholar. He said that this particular hadith mutawatir, right? I would expect him to mention this hadith mutawatir. But then they mentioned that this tawatur isn't like the tawatur of the other things, right, of the other narrations. And this has been explained by people like Al-Kashmiri. He mentions it in Faith al-Bari and his commentary to Tirmidhi. What's his commentary to Tirmidhi called? Alam al-Shan al-Kashmiri? Arf-Shadi. Ma'rifat Sunan was Bin Nuri. So his student Bin Nuri, he wrote like a completion to the Arf-Shadi, which was a commentary on Tirmidhi. There's a bit of our heads now. We'll go to Sahih again. Okay, so this is the hadith about actions according to intentions. Again, people say that, okay, this is hadith and gharib because look, Umar bin Khattab Alqama bin Abi Waqas al-Laythi, Muhammad ibn Ibrahim al-Taymi, Yahya ibn Sa'id al-Ansari. But then later on it became mashhur. This hadith of إنما الأعمال بالنيات. But then they say, even I've heard people mention, scholars of hadith say that this hadith is mutawatir, إنما الأعمال بالنيات. But in reality it's gharib in that sense. But then Umar bin Khattab, when he narrated it, remember, he stood on the mimbar and narrated it. So he was the one who transmitted it to the other Sahaba. That's how it achieved that gharib sort of rank. Okay, so this was, again, gharib nisbi. This is quite difficult to explain. Okay. Alright. Now it comes to the big boy stuff. Big boy stuff. Brad. Hadith Sahih and the categorizations in that sense. Like remember, the brother said last time it's quite difficult in terms of mutawatir ahad, but this is one way of looking at the hadith. Now we're going to look at the gradings of hadith, how hadith are actually graded. So now, if we look at Hadith Qudsi. Before I forget, let's just do Hadith Qudsi. For completion's sake, what's Hadith Qudsi? It'll definitely come in one of these slides, but I'll just mention Hadith Qudsi, what it is. So Hadith Qudsi, what is Hadith Qudsi? Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. What is Hadith Qudsi? Shaykh Fahim?
It is a hadith where Hadith narrates that Allah said, this is this.
Of course, so whose the words belong to?
So it's not a Quran ayah,
Yep.
but it's a hadith.
Remember, Hamza, you said about, is mutawatir Hadith Qudsi? Not really, they're two different types of things. So Hadith Qudsi is huwa hadithun qawliyun marfu'un. So it's a hadith, it's a saying of the Prophet ﷺ that has been elevated to the Prophet ﷺ's mouth. Marfu in the technicality of hadith terminology means the Prophet himself said it. It was about the Prophet ﷺ. So it was a hadith qawli marfu. Nasabahu an-Nabi ﷺ ila Allah azza wa jal. The Prophet ﷺ ascribed it to Allah. من مرادفاته الحديث الإلهي والحديث الرباني. So it's also called Hadith al-Ilahi, Hadith al-Rabbani, and Hadith Qudsi, they're all the same thing. Rabbani, Ilahi, Qudsi. Usually it's narrated by two forms of address. قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم فيما يرويه عن ربه تعالى وهي عبارة السلف والأشهر. So usually it will be like the Messenger of Allah صلى الله عليه وسلم said, in that which was narrated from his Lord. فيما يرويه عن ربه. This is usually how Hadith Qudsi is. Second way that Hadith Qudsi is narrated is قال الله تعالى فيما رواه عن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. Sorry. قال الله تبارك وتعالى فيما رواه عنه رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. So Allah said, but it's been transmitted from the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So an example of this is hadith I quoted in the khutbah this week in this masjid. But what I was confused about is if this hadith was actually two separate hadith or it was the same hadith, and when we were checking, it's actually the same hadith. You know the hadith about the feeding one. Well, I'll read the hadith now. So Imam Muslim, he said, long chain. حدثني محمد بن حاتم ميمون حدثنا بهز حدثنا حماد بن سلمة عن ثابت عن أبي رافع عن أبي هريرة قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إن الله عز وجل يقول يوم القيامة, that Allah the Almighty will say on the day of judgment, يا ابن آدم, O son of Adam, مرضت فلم تعدني. I was ill, but why didn't you come and visit me? And then the servant will say, قال يا ربي كيف أعودك وأنت رب العالمين. How could I come and visit you when you were sick? But you're the Lord of the world. How could you get sick and be afflicted by illness and ailment? قال أما علمت أن عبدي فلان مرض فلم تعده. Didn't you know that my fulah servant, this servant of mine, was ill and you didn't visit him? أما علمت أنك لو عدته لوجدتني عنده. Don't you know that if you visited this particular person when they were ill, you would have found me there? Right? This hadith is Hadith Qudsi. Why? Because Allah is saying it. Oh, sorry. Allah is saying it, but the words are from the Prophet ﷺ. And then this hadith I mentioned in the khutbah, and then the second part of the hadith, Allah continues in the same hadith and He says, يا ابن آدم استطعمتك فلم تطعمني. I asked you for food, but you didn't feed me. قال, and then the Messenger of Allah, the servant says, يا ربي وكيف أطعمك وأنت رب العالمين. How could I feed you whilst you are the Lord of the worlds? قال أما علمت أنه استطعمك عبدي فلان فلم تطعمه. Then you know that such and such a servant of mine asked you for food, but you didn't feed him. أما علمت أنك لو أطعمته لوجدت ذلك عندي. That if you had fed him, then you would have found me there. You would have, in fact, be feeding me. And there's another bit about him, the servant asking, Allah asking the servant, why didn't you give me water when I was in need or when I was thirsty? And then the servant says the same thing. And then Allah says, if you gave water to the person who is thirsty, you would in fact be giving water to me. Right? So it's actually a great thing. And I think this hadith is a real kind of eye opener for ourselves as well. When people ask for food, especially the homeless and things like that, when we should actually be going out of our way to feed them and things like that. Like I know people say, oh, don't give them money because what if they use it for drugs, etc. But if we just bought some food and then give it to them, I think that's a way of fulfilling this hadith. And but then what if you go KFC, give them haram food? Are you fulfilling it then? And the debate continues. But anyway, the point is, give them. I think just give them food. Let's just fulfill this hadith. And it's eye-opening for Believe and Do Good Week, inshallah. You guys are joining. We should tell everyone about this Believe and Do Good. We quote this hadith, Hadith Qudsi. What is Hadith Qudsi?
Where the Prophet narrated from Allah.
From Allah. So the words are
Allah's word.
Allah's words, but in the articulation of the Prophet ﷺ. And then, yeah. So this is Hadith
Just
Qudsi.
a thing about in regards to the food, right?
Yeah.
What I've heard is if the meat is provided in a country where majority are non-Muslims,
Yeah.
we could consume it.
Oh,
So I
this-
want to open up.
Okay, no worries. No, it's good. I like controversy. Yeah, you know this one. I like this one. But
That's the majority opinion is what I've heard.
yeah. So
It's like a-
when you're giving food to someone,
Yeah.
so I think when it comes to Sheikh Muhammad will answer you further, but when it comes to sort of giving in charity, it's best to sort of give in charity in halal means. But we obviously don't know. For example, if I'm donating to a non-Muslim charity, and then they go and buy like haram food that you can't consume, and then they give it to them, is your charity negated?
No, there is a
No.
limit to the
Yeah,
extent we give.
there's a limit, but then you still get the reward for charity. You understand?
The
And
intention is there.
the intention is there, and it's about you. Even for example, you give your zakat to a person. This is a masala in Kitab al-Zakat. That if you give your zakat to a person, and it turned out that they weren't poor, but they accepted your zakat, do you have to give zakah again? What do you think? Yeah. There's ikhtilaf amongst the scholars, but the majority jamhur is no. You don't give it again because when you took it out, you gave the intention. So I think it boils down to the intention there, and especially with these things. But obviously, we don't give alcohol to as gifts and things like that. This is a whole different discussion about gifts. I think
Hadiyah, you mean?
yeah, hadiyah. Look, so when I give a gift, am I allowed, because when there's Christmas parties and things like that, am I allowed to give a gift of alcohol to my neighbor? The jamhur,
In your opinion, if you bought something haram,
yeah,
then
then give it anyway. Yeah, that's what people kind of do in that sense. Like, if they found out it's haram, but you can't return it, then what do you do with it? You chuck it in the bin or give it? You would give it. Yeah, it's not because you would give it. One of those things like riba. What do you do with the extra surplus money of riba? You give it in charity, but not with the intention of reward, but with the intention of fulfilling the command of Allah. And when Mufti Taqi Uthman came to Manchester last year, he mentioned this and he said, you will get the reward for fulfilling the commandment of Allah, not for just giving that interest in charity, not for the
But,
charity.
The interest is not something. It's not our property anyway.
Yeah, of course, it's Allah's property, but by you giving it to this sort of charity, people say, yeah, you should donate it to sort of erect your toilets and things like this. But I think that's a bit extreme because in that sense, because you fulfilled your duty in giving that sadaqah.
Just get rid of it.
Yeah,
right?
just get rid of it. But by you getting rid of it in this halal means and not using it, you'll get reward for following the commands of Allah. Because you're not spending it. Do you understand? That's your reward. And obviously Allah looks at the lens holistically. Just as the muhaddith looks at the hadith, Allah looks at your deeds holistically. And for one reward, maybe Allah will give you 10 times more because of that thought that you had. So can you see from this haram thing, Allah gave you so much more barakah.
Yeah.
Right? So it's just about looking at these sort of things. Let's go back to Hadith Qudsi, the differences between the Quran and Hadith Qudsi. Who knows the differences between the Quran and Hadith Qudsi?
Well, first would be like the chain of narrations. There's a lot more chain of narrations for the Quran than there is for Hadith Qudsi.
Oh, that's a good one. So
And the
Al-Quran,
Quran would be some revelation through Jibreel.
mashallah. So we got two already of this list that's here. So the first one that you Umar mentioned, Al-Quran al-Karim ثبوته قطعي لنقله بالتواتر. Right? So Quran Kareem was narrated by Tawatur, the mass transmission that we spoke about last time. Al-Hadith al-Qudsi ثبوته ظني لعدم نقله بالتواتر. There's no Hadith Qudsi Tawatur like in that on that level, same level as the Quran. The second one brother mentioned, Al-Quran Kareem أوحى بلفظه ومعناه بواسطة جبريل. So Jibreel brought down the Quran, but it's not a condition that the words of the Hadith Qudsi be brought down by Jibreel. That's not a condition. The third one is Al-Quran Kareem معجز متحدًا به والجملة منه تسمى آية. So Quran Kareem is like it's a special, it's a miraculous in nature, every single verse, and every verse is called an ayah. Not every sentence, every verse, because sometimes verses are incomplete, sentences are incomplete, but Allah wanted an ayah there. Every single ayah is munazzal min Allah. It might be in the middle of a sentence, but because Allah wanted an ayah there, it's an ayah, and this is specific to the Quran. Hadith Qudsi doesn't have that kind of thing.
And how does Hadith Qudsi get revealed to?
Hadith Qudsi could be Allah just puts it down the heart of the Prophet ﷺ, things like this, right? It's not a condition that Jibreel comes down. So what's the point of knowing the difference between Hadith Qudsi and Salah? I'll give you the answer. What's the difference between knowing Hadith Qudsi and Quran? What's the point of knowing the difference?
You can't read Hadith Qudsi in Salah.
Yeah, you can't read Hadith Qudsi in Salah because Hadith Qudsi is word of Allah, but you can't read it in Salah, right? وَلَا تَسْمَعُوا الصَّلَاةَ بِقِرَاءَةِ Hadith Qudsi. Also, can you think of another reason? رواية بالمعنى.
You can do Hadith Qudsi riwayat al-Ma'na.
Yeah, explain what رواية بالمعنى is to
It means
these.
that if you have one verse in the Hadith, then you may explain it in your own words. Only if you have one verse, you may explain it in words that match the meaning. Quran, you have to, the way it is, that's how you do it.
Yeah, because this Sheikh has a bit of a problem with people who say to the nearest effect, to the nearest meaning. It's true, it's a Hadithi way of looking at it. Obviously, Jalil thinks he's against Tabligh because of that. But basically, in certain groups, right, when you narrate hadith, they'll say to the nearest meaning, to the nearest effect, right? The words, they're not sure if that's actually the words of the Prophet ﷺ or not. They're just narrating it how they remember it.
Oh, yeah.
Are you allowed to do that or not? There's a big discussion regarding that, but that's called riwaya bil ma'na, narrating in terms of meaning, nearest meaning. In Arabic, they do that as well, right? Sometimes they used to do in the early days riwaya bil ma'na, and that's where there was a big controversy in Western, like the Orientalists. They look back at hadith and like, okay, they were allowed to do riwaya bil ma'na there, and then people like Dr. Mustafa Al-Azmi, who mastered Orientalism, graduate from Darul Deoband, mastered Orientalism, PhD Cambridge, and then he tackled all these issues. But yeah, that's one of the critiques of Islam by the Western sort of Orientalists. What's it talking? Oh yeah, riwaya bil ma'na. Riwaya bil ma'na, you're allowed to do that of the Hadith Qudsi. You're allowed in terms of Hadith ways, yeah. But you're not allowed to do it when it comes to Quran. Riwaya bil ma'na is haram when it comes to Quran. You have to quote the Quran word for word, right? That's why you have to learn your door. Ramadan's coming. Al-Quran يتعبد بتلاوته ولو لم يفهم قارئه المعنى. It's ibadah to read Quran, even if the person who's reciting the Quran doesn't understand the meaning, it's still ibadah. But Hadith Qudsi وليس كذلك الحديث القدسي. But that can be argued because when people, like, especially in the madaris, when like people die or this big occasion, they do a khatam of Sahih al-Bukhari. Like I don't know if you guys did it as well. Did you do it? Did you guys do it Ken as well? Khatam al-Bukhari. Therefore,
You do it in the graves as well, like,
Do.
like
What?
not here, like in other countries where, like in Yemen, my teach used to say that you used to sit there and just for days they used to read Bukhari like 3 days or something.
yeah, there's a barakah. So any for there's a big occasion, something needs to happen. There's a big musibah. They'll sit down and do riwayas of Sahih Bukhari.
Is it innovation?
We open this kind of worms here, but the thing is, I think with this is more with tajruba, because scholars have experienced
Okay.
that if you read Sahih Bukhari, it does sort of alleviate like difficulties.
Some cultures have, I don't know again, Khatam Quran, right? If a
Yeah.
person dies.
Yeah, Khatm al-Quran is different. That's ibadah in and of itself. But read the problem is this scholar who this Mustalah al-Hadith book is saying, is just reading the hadith without understanding the meaning, is that ibadah or not? Right? So again, we said it's debate. He said it's not ibadah. He goes, it's not ibadah. But obviously, if it's read for this sort of purpose, it can be ibadah. But it's difficult. And then they say also, Hadith Qudsi. Oh, I just lost the page. Yeah, يحرم على المحدث مسه وعلى الجنب تلاوته. Right? So it's to touch the Hadith Qudsi, right? To touch the Quran when you're in the state of ritual impurity is haram, but to touch the Hadith Qudsi is not. But then again, it's against the adab to do so. So they say that even the shuyukh of Hadith, it's makruh. Even the shuyukh of Hadith would never narrate a Hadith without wudu. Right? They'll always say, come in the state of wudu to your classes when you're narrating Hadith, because of the respect for the words of Rasulullah. And it's even mentioned about Abu Huraira's famous student, the one that Shafi'i says he accepts his mursalat. Who is this person? You went to Shafi'i Dalum and you didn't know his name. Come on, man. English Shafi'i. What is his name? Sa'id ibn al-Musayyab. Musayyib है या मुसैयब, दोनों पढ़ सकते हैं. Musayyab is afsah. Sa'id ibn al-Musayyab, he was a famous tabi'i. So Sa'id ibn al-Musayyab, once he was like very ill and he was old, he was lying down and someone asked him to narrate hadith for him, and he got up even though he was very kind of ill, and then he narrated the hadith just out of the respect of the words of hadith. Do you understand? So these sort of small things, not fard, but they would do it out of their own like kind of respect kind of thing. So it's the last thing. What would be the last thing in terms of transmission, if it's tawatur or non-tawatur? Okay. Yeah, Hamza mentioned it before about hadith mutawatir. What will the person become if they object to it? Yeah, so يكفر جاحد شيء من القرآن الكريم وليس كذلك الحديث القدسي. So if you disagreed with hadith Qudsi, it's not tantamount to kufr, but then it'd be that in terms of thing. Hold on, let me just fix this.
Also, a side question. Like,
Yeah.
who are the main narrators of the Quran?
You mean in terms of transmission? Every single Sahabi. That's why there's no doubt in the tawatur of the Quran, because every single Sahabi who accepted Islam would have heard the Quran from the Prophet ﷺ, because that was his main transmission, wouldn't it?
Is there a way of finding out which Sahaba narrated or recorded each ayah?
I mean, again, people say that when you come to the usul of tafsir, we'll do that next year, inshallah, usul of tafsir. So they mention in usul of tafsir that Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu had a Quran with the tartib of nuzul.
What does that mean?
With the order of every single ayah when it was revealed. But this, they say, is min ruwat al-Shi'i. Like it's from the Shia narrators. Okay, so Sahih. What were we talking about? Sorry, I just got sidetracked. Mutawatir. Oh yeah, yukaffir jahiduhu. So the one who objects to Quran Kareem, what will it be? They'll fall into daira of kufr. But then it's not like that in Hadith Qudsi. So this is things about Hadith Qudsi. So this is basically overview. And then next
Are you
thing,
going to share this with us?
this presentation.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
Of course. It's not like hidden information.
No, no. If
Bismillah.
you could share it now.
Yeah, definitely. After this, I'll give you, because the whole book's there.
Okay.
You know, so it's good in that sense. So maybe next time you can just look ahead.
Just brush through.
Yeah. So Deen. Okay. So then it comes in terms of hadith being accepted and rejected. Maqbool and mardud. So in terms of accepting and rejecting hadith, and these are the categories where, you know, this is where people are concerned with, especially our Salafi brothers. Yeah, they are concerned with this sort of category, right? And now Umar's the Hanafi now. He's half Hanafi, yeah?
What?
Half Hanafi now.
It's a process.
He's in the process. He's in the process of Hanafiization.
Does it matter which school of thought?
Of course it doesn't. Of course it doesn't. As long as you stick to principles. No, as long as you're Hanafi, it's fine.
No, the thought should be,
Don't worry, I'll
like,
punish
if you look at the Sahabas, they didn't have this kind of four madhabs, right?
Yeah.
So
I think
why would we need to be?
yeah, it is important, but then the whole of this science of okay, this reminds me of a story actually. Ahmed ibn Hanbal, when he went to Makkah to take the hadith from Sufyan al-Thawri. So Ahmed ibn Hanbal and Ishaq ibn Rahway, they were boys in hadith, like boys, I mean, they used to go to hadith gatherings together. Like, you know, you guys come together. They used to go to scholars of hadith and narrate hadith together. So one day they went to Makkah just to get hadith from this particular scholar called Sufyan al-Thawri, big scholar. And then Ishaq ibn Rahway went to that gathering, but then thing never went. What's his name? Ahmed bin Hanbal never went. And he said, where were you? And he's like, oh, I was sitting with that kid Shafi, because he was a small guy compared to this guy. And then he's like, how could you leave the gathering of Sufyan al-Thawri, who's such a big hadith narrator, for this kid, like this little guy, right? And then he said to him, وَمَا فَقَدْتُهُ مِنْ عُلُوٍ وَجَدْتُهُ بِالنُّزُولِ. Whatever I miss in terms of ulu sanad, I'll hear it from you. If I miss a hadith from him, you can transmit the hadith to me, I don't mind. But what I'm going to miss from this guy, I'm not going to get anywhere else. And what he got from Imam Shafi was understanding this hadith to be correct and weak, understanding how we apply this hadith, understanding when there's two hadiths that are conflicting, which do we act upon. So these understandings, he got it from Shafi, right? But he goes, whatever I'm going to miss from Shafi, I'm never going to get it anywhere else. That's why they say Shafi was the formulator of Usulul Hadith and Usulul Fiqh in general. But then the Hanafis say, no, Imam Abu Yusuf had another book in Usulul Hadith that he got it from before. But I think in reality, even if that existed, the codification definitely existed, as in this methodology of sort of developing a weak and strong hadith, this methodology of learning when to apply and when to disregard, this definitely existed before his time. But when it came to sort of understanding the hadith in terms of codification, like codifying these rules, it's probably Shafi who wrote it first. Or at least his book reached us, because what happens is people might say a book existed, but because of in Islamic history, you guys know there was a lot of wars that happened, a lot of libraries were burned, because that's the first, you know, when they used to have fights with the Muslim countries, first thing they used to go to the library and burn the libraries because they didn't want them to be advanced. They used to throw all the rivers and the books in the rivers, to such an extent, I think it was the river in Basra which turned black with the ink of books. Imagine, because they didn't want that development, because they knew these guys were in the light ages. So let's get these guys down somehow. So the point of me saying that was some of the books that were in earlier, they were lost. So there could have been amazing books that were many hadith, right? But some of them could have been lost. But it's from the qudra of Allah that what we need for our deen has reached us. What we need for our deen. I mean, there could be many, many hadith. But yeah. Okay. So Sahih, okay. So now this is the diagram, this overview. What did it say here?
Grade.
What? Grade, okay. So in terms of his grade, these are the hadith, and this is what everyone wants to talk about. This is the juicy topic in Usul al-Hadith, right? And then application, this is what the fuqaha talk about. Is this hadith applied or is it not applied, right? So this is according to the grade of hadith. So in terms of the application and non-application, that's another thing. So there's the juicy topics in Usul Hadith is these ones. These are the grades. So now we talk about the Sahih Hadith. When the brother says this Hadith is Sahih, remember? This Hadith is Sahih. Why don't you act upon it? Are you leaving the words of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam for the words of Imam? Remember? But remember, this brother didn't understand this diagram. Accepted, you look at it in two ways. Application, he didn't look at it in terms of application. This is when we talk about mutawatir, ahad and things like this. On this side, can you see the pointer? This is when we talk about in terms of grade. So many hadith could have reached this grade, Sahih, the most authentic grade. But then in terms of applicability, no. Because of various reasons, it could be that it's mansukh, meaning that this was the ruling in the beginning of Islam, but then the ruling changed. For example, we said the ruling of alcohol, it was allowed in the beginning of Islam. In prayer, they were allowed to talk in prayer,
They're allowed to give salam.
Yeah, they were
Someone
salam
says
alaikum.
salam, we can, yeah.
That's debated again. Are we still allowed to give salam in
No,
prayer?
I think we can raise the hands. If someone says salam, we'll pray.
All right.
I'll mention an interesting side point.
So, our Prophet Sallallahu used to return the salam. And then
I think, in the prayer, what's considered, I think, that would break your prayer is what you would do if an onlooker saw, and if the onlooker thought that you weren't in salah, then that would break your salah. This is the golden rule kind of thing. So anything you have to decide yourself, is this such a big thing that I'm breaking myself? For example, the two hands thing, right? There's a rule as well. If you use two hands, then would that break it? And this is in the Hanafi school. This is a fiqhi side point about Imam Abu Yusuf and Imam Muhammad. Imam Muhammad would always specify things, like 10 by 10. He would specify, but obviously in the hadith there's no mention of a 10 by 10 large pond. This is a side masala. But he would categorize 10 by 10 pond means a large vat of water. He would categorize 2 hands means your salah is broken. But Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, he would say utruk ala mubtala bih, that just leave it on the person who's affected by it. You decide for yourself. Al maru faqih al nafs. That person, he would decide for themselves if this was a big thing or not. Do you understand? So this is the side point. What we've been talking about that. A salam in prayer. I'll just mention a side point. Another side point. Ikhtiyar, Kitab al-Mukhtar. It's one of the mutun of the Hanafi school that we did in Darudum. So in there, Shaykh Shuaib al-Note, he's a hadith scholar, but he's Hanafi. So on one page, I'll share it with you after. This is rare knowledge, yeah? Because you have to look at it to get it. So on the bottom, basically the Hanafi says, in the book it says, raising your hand for prayer in salam is not allowed. But then Shuaib al-Note, even though he's a Hanafi and he's a very muqallid type of sheikh, he's a hadith scholar as well. He's Albani considered him to be one of the greatest scholars of hadith. He's from Albania. Sheikh Shuaib al-Note, he passed away a couple of years ago. So in there he mentions about salam. He goes, yeah, salam with the hands is fine because of that hadith. But that was kind of a weird place to mention it. The reason why because he did all the takhrij of the hadith of that book. So every hadith that was in that book, he would find the asal in the hadith books for that. But that was just a side point. He went against the Hanafi school there. So again, these 4 categories: sahih li dhatihi, sahih li ghayrihi, hasan li dhatihi, and hasan li ghayrihi. So this is in terms of, what did I say there? Grade. And then this is in terms of application. Can you see my pointer? Applicable, non-applicable. G. So okay. So again, Sahih, linguistically, this is the scales of ranking it up. You hear me? So يقسم الخبر المقبول بالنسبة إلى تفاوت مراتبه إلى قسمين رئيسين. So there's 2. Well, this guy's asking something. Next week. So there's 2 distinctions in between there. Okay, so this is linguistically, what does Sahih mean? What does Sahih mean in terms of the linguistics? Sahih actually means healthy. Yeah? In the reality, according to the dictionary, if you say Sahih, I'm healthy. You're healthy boy. The hadith we mentioned in Jummah, what was the hadith? اغتنم خمسا قبل خمس شبابك قبل هرمك وصحتك قبل سقمك. Remember the hadith if you were asleep. There was 5 things, appreciate 5 things before 5. One of them was appreciate your health before your illness, health before ailment. So sahih is actually used for good health. That's what it literally means. Sahih ضد السقيم, it's the opposite of unwellness. وهو حقيقة في الأجسام. Its real meaning is when it comes to the body, majazun fil hadith wa sa'irul ma'ani. But it's metaphorically used when it comes to hadith and other meanings as well. So what does it mean technically? هو اشتمل التعريف السابق على okay. ما اتصل سنده بنقل العدل الضابط عن مثله إلى منتهاه من غير شذوذ ولا علة. There's 5 conditions, 5 criteria for a hadith to be sahih. 5 criteria. This is the big definition here. A hadith which has a continuous sanad going back, continuous sanad meaning there's no breaks in the chain. Number 1, back to the Prophet ﷺ, made up of upright, reliable narrators. Point number 2, they have to be upright and reliable. We're going to go through what that means in a bit. But upright and reliable, narrating from upright and reliable narrators. So the person who's narrating, the person who's getting the narration, both upright and reliable. Right? They have to be precise in terms of their mind, and it's found to be free from any irregularities and defects. So this irregularity and defect means a specific thing, which is going to come in the slides. So these are the 5 conditions. Number 1, continuity of chain of transmitters going back to the Prophet ﷺ. Yeah, this nice little one. So that's what's that in Arabic? Ittisal, right? Ittisal of sanad. So they say 3 of the shurut are wujudiyya, 2 of the shurut are adamiyya. So you need 3 in it, and you need to be devoid of 2 things. The first one is a continuous chain going back to the Prophet ﷺ.
Sorry, 3 and 2. What is it?
Yeah, I'm going to the next one. Number 2. Number 2 is integrity, adala, right? Everyone has to be in the chain, has to be respectable. They can't be someone who's known for telling lies, right? Again, is the people in, that's why you have to look of why, because this is a whole science. In the sub-science of usul hadith, there's a whole science called jarh wa ta'dil, which is disparaging and crediting people by looking at the biographies, by looking at their lives. Is he a reliable narrator or is he an unreliable narrator? This is a whole entire science. So you have to see, because sometimes someone says he's unreliable. Why? Because he's from a particular place. That's not a good way of saying he's unreliable. Because, so for example, Amash, he wouldn't narrate people. Why? You know why he wouldn't narrate from people? If he saw a guy riding on a Turkish horse, he wouldn't narrate from him. That's not a reason not to narrate from him, because he said he's lavish, he's living the life of the dunya, riding a Turkish horse. I'm not taking hadith from him, right? But then, okay, you might say, okay, Bukhari, he never took from people. Remember the famous story with the guy who, I think it was his horse or his donkey, and he tricked the animal, and he's like, oh, yeah, I'm not going to take hadith from him, but he traveled a long way. That was for that particular book, because Bukhari did narrate from people who weren't on that level in his other books. But for that particular book, which we're going to talk about next week, Sahih al-Bukhari, that particular book, he had this really high threshold, but for the other books, he would allow that. So sometimes people used to like disparage people, say this guy is not credible for really not good reasons, right? And they're not acceptable. Oh, he lives in this place, that's why I'm not going to rate from him. Oh, he rides a Turkish horse, that's why I'm not going to rate from him. Oh, he speaks, he's not Arab, that's why I'm not going to rate from him. This is actually what people have said, right? But then this is why later on they analyze, and the scholars of Mustalah al-Hadith, they see this, and they're like, okay, this is not a valid reason to disparage this person. So integrity is the second thing. This person has to be have good integrity. They have to be a good person, not known for lying or buhtan or things like this. The third point, did you guys get the second one? Yeah. Third point, they have to be, it's called dhabt. He translated as accuracy. It's more precision. They have to have a good intellect. Sometimes dhabt can go, because as you go older, remember in the thingy about the 5 stages of life, what did As-Suyuti say? How do you protect yourself from reaching old age? Like Ardhalil Umar. Protect yourself in the old age. Now read Quran. Remember, he said, وَمِنْكُمْ, what was the ayah of the Quran? والله خلقكم ثم يتوفاكم ومنكم من يرد إلى أرذل العمر. So Allah created you, right? And then He gives you death. And from some of you, He takes you to the ends of age, meaning He brings you back in terms of age, meaning when people have dementia and these sort of illnesses towards the end of their life, right? So how do you protect yourself from that? As Suyuti mentions, read abundant Quran. Remember? So it could be the case where a narrator was dhabit in the beginning, but because he got old, he lost his precision. So how would you know when it is? So how would you know if this? So is this scholar reliable? So for example, I'm telling you, he fulfills these conditions, but he becomes old and his memory becomes weak now. So can you narrate from him or not?
The accuracy goes down.
The accuracy goes down, but can you narrate? In general, so hadith from him, do I say no? Daif. Huh? Reject. Mardud. Then?
But he would have narrated it during
Huh?
his youth, young age.
Yeah, so
why to? So then that is accurate.
that is accurate, exactly. So everything that came before his illness, before his ikhtilat, you take from him, and anything that came after, you wouldn't take from him. How would you know that?
Could you compare it to other hadith, the same hadith that other people may have narrated?
That's a good way. But the thing is, just because you're weak in memory doesn't mean you're going to do it wrong all the time. Sometimes you might get it right. So what if it was the case that this guy, he was still kind of lost his memory, lost his mind, lost his marbles, but at the same time he narrated the hadith correctly, just on that occasion? How would you know afterwards? Huh? His students, exactly. So for example, this famous one, this is when I was doing the study of Rafi Yadain, they were saying about Abu Ishaq as-Sabi'i. Abu Ishaq as-Sabi'i. He said whenever he narrates from Sufyan, right? Where is it? I can remember. Oh, I can't remember. But Abu Ishaq as-Sabi'i is a famous hadith scholar, but he kind of ikhtalat, he lost his marbles a bit later on, right? And he, not to be disrespectful, he developed some sort of dementia, some illness like that, where he couldn't remember a lot. So then he used to narrate from his books, and he used to get it wrong sometimes. But how do you know when to take the hadith from him, when to not? It's from his students. So whenever he narrated from Sufyan al-Thawri, it said that Sufyan al-Thawri narrated from him before the days that he got like that. So you can tell from which student he narrates from. But then what if it's just, what if the same student narrated from him before ikhtilat and after ikhtilat? Huh? What if the students didn't exist? This is why you need to be a genius to be a Mustalah al-Hadith expert. This is Imam Bukhari's work. This is what Imam Bukhari did. He knows, he just through these little things, he can spot, right? He'll understand, okay, this guy, he narrated from him at this point. Everyone says it's Sahih, but I don't say Sahih because he narrated from him after he got his illness. He went to the different lands to learn people's biographies, to learn about people and their lives, to understand at what point they got it. Because you have to remember, back in those days, data logging and age and things like that wasn't really well known. So you wouldn't be able to say, oh, he got diagnosed with dementia when he was 60. No, it's not like these times for dementia where they say when they were diagnosed with dementia, right? They don't really. It's like a roughly at this point. So you have to be even more on it to know when the hadith is sahih and when to take from him, when to not take from him.
I've heard that Imam Bukhari was blind. Is that?
Imam Bukhari was blind. Yes.
And then his mother prayed and did dua.
Ibrahim, yeah. So I want to mention the life of Imam Bukhari next week, inshallah. But I'll just say in brief, when he was little, he was blind, and his mother made dua. His father passed away, Ismail, who's Muhammad ibn Ismail. His father was a very big hadith scholar, and he left some wealth and his mom spent all that wealth for him to acquire knowledge of hadith. He was blind, his mom made dua, and then his mom saw Ibrahim alayhi salam in a dua, in a dream. And Ibrahim alayhi salam said that you go to your son, and he's got his eyesight back. She woke up and he got his eyesight back. But why Ibrahim alayhi salam and not the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Why Ibrahim and not the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? People have mentioned reasons for this. Well, next time, inshallah. I'll leave that as a cliffhanger for you guys. Why Ibrahim came in the dream of the mother and not the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Because surely the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is greater, right? So let's see what you guys' thoughts next time. But anyway, this is the third point, accuracy. The fourth point, free from irregularities. So this irregularities is quite difficult to explain. It's called illah. So illah can be, it's sort of a thing that only advanced hadith scholars will be able to catch out, right? Could you give an example of illah? So in this book they just say وَالْعِلَّةُ سَبَبٌ غَامِضٌ خَفِيٌّ يُقْدَهُ فِي صِحَّةِ الْحَدِيث مَعَ أَنَّ الظَّاهِرَ السَّلَامَ مِنْهُ. It looks like that the hadith is sahih, but in reality it's not sahih. How would that happen?
Could it be if it's irrational? For example, there's that hadith that Hanafis like to critique. You know the one about where the hadith where they say the Sahaba after the Prophet said Ameen, they also said Ameen and it echoed in the masjid.
Yeah, that's it. That's the idraj, isn't it? That's extra, tadrij. So that's extra adding into the hadith matan. But I get where you're coming from, in terms of illah. But illah is more. You're talking, I think, more towards the shadh route. Illah is basically it's a hidden defect. For example, let me look back at this one, and then this is a made-up example, yeah. But for example, Prophet ﷺ narrated it to Anas ibn Malik and Abu Huraira. Anas ibn Malik transmitted to Qatada. Qatada, what did it say? Shu'bah and Sa'id. There were two guys named Sa'id. One was weak, one was Sahih. They both lived in the same place. They were around the same age. They narrated from the same teacher. They had the same students. So how do you know which Sa'id it was? To such an extent, they say, did Imam Nasai narrate from Imam Bukhari? Definitely Imam Bukhari was Imam Nasai's teacher. Definitely he was his teacher because he mentions Qala al-Bukhari, Imam Nasai, Fahim, Imam Nasai in Bukhari, Imam Nasai in his Sunan Sughra, he's got a book of hadith. He says, Bukhari told me this about this guy. But they say, how did he narrate from Bukhari himself? In Kitab al-Sawm of Sunan Nisa'i, when we in Bukhari we checked, in Kitab al-Sawm of Sunan Nisa'i, there's Muhammad ibn Ismail ibn Ibrahim. Yeah? Same name, same dad's name, same even granddad's name. But they give farak when it comes to the granddad, great granddads, Muhammad ibn Ismail ibn Ibrahim ibn al-Mughira. One is Mughira and the other one is something else, right? This is how you have to know their dad's name, their granddad's name, because sometimes they might have the same name, they're from the same place, they're around the same age, they have the same teachers, they have the same students, right? Their dad's name are the same, the granddad's name are the same, right? So how do you know which one it is? One of them's weak, one of them's sahih, right? So two. If you're just looking at the chain and you're a novice, you see, oh yeah, sahih, because it's this guy. But how do you know who it is? This is when you need people like Imam Bukhari to tell you, nah, it's this guy, or nah, it's this guy. Do you understand? They'll be able to pinpoint. This is what I mean. This is the science of Usul al-Hadith. When they're able to pinpoint exactly who this person is. There might be two Sa'ids. There's a few Shu'bahs around, right? But how do you know who it is? It's because of that. Okay, so that's illah. The last point is shudud. Shadh in the Arabic language means what? A rarity. Something that's rare. Absence of a hidden defect. Okay, this should be the other way around, isn't it?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it should be shudud and illa and then shudud. So shadh is basically free from irregularities. So irregularity meaning what? لا يخالف ما فوقه. It doesn't go against that which is above it. هو مخالفة الثقة لمن هو أوثق منه. So if there's another stronger narration, this goes against it, you call it shadh. It's a rare hadith, right? So this is what the scholars of hadith will mention when they critique the hadith. Okay, so what time is it?
Yeah, past 9.
I'll finish in 10 minutes. Yeah. So okay, 5 conditions for hadith. Okay, criticism of the narrator. So this is basically adala, a person known for his performance of obligatory religious duties, right? Remember when I was talking about the integrity, this is the in-depth meaning of that. He's known for he reads the salah, mashallah, in masjid all the time. Yeah? Observance of what is prohibited, right? What is proscribed by Allah Ta'ala, he doesn't do. He doesn't go this KFC on Blatchington Road. He goes to basketball. Diligence in pursuit of righteousness, because these two shops are right next door to each other. So this is the real test, right? When you're gonna, inshallah, you should try it with this.
Well, I'm sorry, what road?
On Blatchington Road.
Yeah.
So what I was saying is,
No, what are the restaurants?
so one is KFC, one is best kebab.
Does it-
Best kebab. They're right next door to each other. Right next door to each other. You know, it's very tempting. Which one will you choose? Right? Ashab al-Yamin, Ashab al-Shimal. But the problem is, it's on the Shimal. Depends on how you look at it. It's the other way.
So is the kebab on the left side?
Yeah. So diligence, okay, so observance of that which is prohibited. Diligence in pursuit of righteousness in his conduct and in dealing with others, right? So he deals with others, mashallah, in a good way. Discipline in speech and truthfulness, he's known for telling the truth and not, gassing, mashallah. Zabt is precision in the transmitting of information, whether by memory or written. So zabt can also be by sahifa. But the problem with the sahifa is, people like Ibn Lahi'a, he's the first narrator that Imam Tirmidhi critiques in Tirmidhi, Sunan Tirmidhi. أول من ولد في أفريقيا بالإسلام. He's the first person who's born Muslim in Africa. Ibn Lahi'a. It mentioned about him when he used to narrate. He narrated the hadith of ihtajaba. He said ihtajama. Right? He changed it around because he read the huruf wrong, and he would transmit it every single time like that because he made a mistake when he was writing. So then, how would you clock that? How would they clock that, Umar? You were on the right lines before.
So if he narrated it to many people, you can compare all of the hadith.
Yeah, because he would take it from a particular teacher, innit? And there'd be more students taking from that teacher. But then they'd go off to their lands, so you'd have to actually visit all their lands in order to, and then cross-compare, So this was the genius of Bukhari when he used to do that. And next time I'll tell you the story of Abu Zubayr and we'll talk about Bukhari's life. But, okay, how to establish adala? So there's two ways of establishing it, that this person is integral. One is fame and reputation. Yeah, he was famous for being like very good, like mashallah, his brother here. Very mashallah. You don't pay your own back. I was just joking. Yeah. So fame and reputation. Yeah, mashallah. He's a very truthful brother, right? And then the second one is testimony of contemporary scholars. This is debatable because there was an issue with the Mufti Abu Layth and the whole Bukhari gate thing. We'll cover, because obviously this is the setting to discuss these sort of things. Next week we'll discuss. We'll talk about Bukhari specifically. We'll discuss it. So Mufti Sahib, he mentions about there's another thing about contemporaries, sort of, and if you've got, never accept the jarh of a contemporary against each other, against another person, because people have said many things like bad things. For example, Nasai says about Abu Hanifa rahimahullah that he's not acceptable in terms of his narrations, etc. So contemporaries you generally wouldn't accept, right? But that's debatable. How to establish that? Comparing statements with reliable students. That's one way, like you said. Second, comparing statements with what his contemporaries reported from one teacher. Second way, comparing his statements at different times. So if he narrated this when he was in this majlis, right, he narrated these students. Later on, he narrated it, the same hadith, to a different group of students, but he may have changed the words a bit. That means his zabt, his precision changed, right? Man got a bit floppy in his memory later on. So the fourth one is comparing written documents with hadith transmitted by memory. So in the beginning, there's really important.
Excuse me, I have to leave.
Of course, no worries.
Sorry, I'm late. It was
Yeah, no worries, of course. By the way, if you need to, we've got YouTube link as well, inshallah. It'll be saved, we'll get it to you through this brother,
Yeah, I'll
inshallah.
give my email to him.
Okay, no worries, inshallah, we'll get it sent to you. Shukran. Wa alaikum salam. Comparing written hadith with documents, okay? Again, condition narrator, effective and non-effective, right? So effective conditions meaning that is it actual a legitimate critique of this guy? If he's actual fasiq, if he's a disobedient guy, yeah, Remember, fasiq is a very deep word, right? You don't ارتدت عليه إن لم يكن صاحبه كذلك رواه Muslim. That if you call someone a fasiq or a kafir and they're not a fasiq or a kafir, it returns to you, right? Because one of these fasiq. So and they used to get ta'dhir in the Hanafi, they get ta'dhir if you call someone a fasiq, and it, you know, comes with the qaik. Second one is the liar, if they're a sharabi, right? From the Kawali. That's massive therapy, yeah. So if they're an alcoholic, not metaphorically, literal alcoholic, because some poets are alcoholics in terms of their love, but in terms of reality, alcoholic. Third one is obviously kufr, that negates it. Sometimes before they die, yeah, this one. Huh? Okay. Non-effective one is permissible actions, even if customarily criticized. For example, the owning of a Turkish horse. You don't say this guy is not a good narrator for this, right? Just because he wrote on the Turkish horse. Just because he's from a certain area, it doesn't mean you don't narrate from him. Again, people might have a higher threshold for particular books like Bukhari, right? That's obviously okay. Again, committing minor sins, doing a prohibited act which he deems permissible. وبعض حنفي انطلى وإن قلت حنفيا قالوا بأنني أبيح الطلاء وهو الشراب المحرم وبعض حنفي انطلى Hanafis and a little bit of Nabid, yeah. Just passing Nabid around, isn't it? They narrated it when they were on Nabid. Astaghfirullah. I forgot it was being recorded. So doing a prohibited act which he deems permissible, that's mu'awwal. So for example, someone says, yeah, prawns are impermissible because you're only allowed to eat fish from the sea, right? But this guy's like, there's one reason why not to be Hanafi, unfortunately. Now, I'm joking, prawns are halal, man. كل شيء halal in the Hanafiyya. So basically, if you can prove it to be right, then it's okay. Bid'ah not leading to disbelief. Remember, I said there were Shia narrators in Bukhari. Yeah, they can be bid'ah, but that's not leading to disbelief. But then again, it comes man waqqara sahiba bid'atin faqad a'ana ala hadm al-Islam. That's another thing. That can you do tawqir of bid'ah? And inshallah, we'll continue next time with shadh. Let's finish off this last slide actually. So conditions for accepting hadith, condition of the narrator, receiving knowledge, transmitting knowledge. So to receive the knowledge, you have to have good understanding and memory. Was As-Suyuti the student of Ibn Hajar or not? Ibn Hajar, I'll give you guys a bit of context. Ibn Hajar, Fathul Bari, he was a famous hadith scholar. When he passed away, As-Suyuti was 3 years old. As-Suyuti, but then As-Suyuti sometimes says Ibn Hajar said this, and he transmits from the chain. His father used to take him to the gatherings, but then some people say, is that enough for you to be transmitting hadith? And Qadi Iyad has an opinion as well. But in regards to that, I think, of course, if you heard it and you were aware of it, then how could you transmit it? But that's Suyuti's irregularity. Transmitting knowledge, you have to be puberty, you have to, mashallah, be baligh. Islam, you have to be Muslim, you have to be honesty, continuity in chain, and memory since receiving till transmitting, right? Since receiving till transmitting, you need the memory. And inshallah, we'll finish on that. Like, Bismillah.
I was going to say, the bid'ah part,
Yeah.
like, if it doesn't lead to disbelief, you can narrate it. I heard though, like, if it's to do with the bid'ah, so for example, if a Shia narrates something about Ahlul Bayt Ali, then that's on grounds for rejection.
Interesting. Were you here when we spoke about Man Kuntu Mawlahu fa Aliyun Mawlahu? Were you here? Or was he here? Right in the beginning, we spoke about this Sheikh Jafar al-Kattani in Nazm al-Mutanathir fi Min al-Hadith al-Mutawatir hadith book, where he collects mutawatir hadith. In that book, he narrated the hadith that whoever's my Mawla, Ali is his Mawla. Like in terms of like virtuous friend, companion, patron. So I said in the beginning, a lot of time disregard these sort of narrations from the Ahlul Bayt and the virtues of the Ahlul Bayt and Ali radiallahu ta'ala in particular, right? But I think we shouldn't go into the mind frame that, oh yeah, just because it's a virtue of them, we disregard it. We should compare it with other chains to begin with, inshallah. So, Sheikh, inshallah, subhanallah, bihamdihi, subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika, wa nashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Next time we'll continue from Shadh. It took a bit longer than expected, but Shadh and then Life of Bukhari and then looking at Bukhari in a critical sense.